So welcome to our 12-week series of Call to Work. Notice the new time for starting next week. Welcome to the Call to Work series. And today we are learning about number 9, mold the office culture. We do a quick review on last week, minister grace and love. So very quickly from last week, we learned to minister grace and love, we need to have very good EQ, manage our own emotion and influence and understand others' emotions so that we could have trusted relationship with good understanding and empathy. So I'm going to go through some few quick highlights on the EQ and communication skill. So from our email, and thank you for those of you who sent in your homework or class action. I hate to call this a homework. It's a class action because it isn't for me. It is really for you. It's tools to help you, to encourage, to equip you to really apply what we learned from our class into your daily life. So it's happy learning and happy living what we learn. So how do we respond to God as I'm called to work? So we finished the third M, minister, grace, and love. So we talked about these sets of acrostics, and we'll do a quick reminder. EQ is how to not let others' words or action degrade our value or control our response. So we can be more self-aware of our own emotions, managing them, and then be more aware of others' emotion and have empathy for them to build healthy social skills and true trusted relationship. We talked about how to be wise, right? When someone get on your nerve, someone get you upset, be sure not to let people's words and action and attitude be your burden because they are responsible for their words and action, not you. So don't take on the burden unnecessarily. So we want to be wise by waiting, take a pause to pray, take a walk in what we call the spiritual balcony, leaving the very intense environment. And impact assessment, what is the action, what's the consequence, what happened? So you're more thoughtful, not just reacting, then you're more thoughtful to respond instead of just reacting based on your emotion. Try to think about how to solve the problem, and then we're going to talk a little bit about apology today, since many of you asked about apology, which is a very important tool for relationship building and for conflict resolution. Then express what that problem is and what the solution is. We also talked about how President Roosevelt said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. How do we care? We want to care by connection in our emotion and the relationship. We want to care by appreciation of what people do, catch people do right, and thank them, recognition, giving them kudos in public, praise in public. And you may make recommendation in private, but you always want to praise and recognize in public. And then engagement. When you engage people, interaction, always help to care about them. And then many of us talked about how we love the SHINE values. So this is some summary and key characteristics of living the SHINE value. And then in opposite, we don't want to do the GROWN's value because SHINE helps us to build good EQ, how to treat people the right way. GROWN's, it's when we just react and have very low EQ behavior. So we want to avoid the GROWN's behavior, the GROWN's value. And then finally, I share with you the 4 EQ rules to live by. And it gets better and better and better. The typical golden rule that we all know, treat others as you want to be treated is not good enough. So we want to treat them as they want to be treated or we want to be treated, which is win-win. And the best, just like Haishao shared, how to treat others, WWJD. What would Jesus do? Treat others as Jesus would treat you. So when we look at this iceberg, And when we hire people, as smart, as capable as you may be in your IQ, EQ is actually much more appreciated because when you can work well with people, we prefer that quite a bit, especially if you want to become a manager and a leader. And then on the communication skill, we talked about ABCDE communication skills that work. And we went more in detail on how to be a good active listener. That to me is the core and the crux of being a good leader. That's why our LQ is defined by listen. When you're good at listening, and God gave us 2 ears for a reason, it goes a long way to be a good leader. Then body language, character praise, so we can specifically praise them, not just say good, wonderful, but we use character like generosity, ethical, responsibility, good character to appreciate exactly what they did. And then we need to watch what we say, discipline our tongue. Unless you have something good, positive, encouraging, and appreciative to say, otherwise, keep your mouth shut. So pray and think 3 times before you open your mouth, and be sure it's important and encouraging. And finally, express how to be positive in a 5A way, in affirming them, accepting them, appreciating, showing affection and being authentic, and then even apology. We'll talk a little bit about that today. So look at the body language is very powerful because visual is 55%, and the voice, your tone, your pace, your volume, those all count a lot more than the verbal, which is just 7% based on research. And then for active listening, we need to extend grace to people. Be graceful, be gracious, because it helps when we give encouragement and feedback and use I statement, restate, rephrase, summarize what they said, especially the emotion. Name the emotion that you saw in that person. It goes a long way. And then ask good question, not close-ended. We want to ask open-ended questions. So it's not yes, no answer. It's why, who, where, when. And those will invite discussion and engage them. And be considerate, right? Be sensitive to meet them where they are, and be open-minded to show dignity and respect for them. And then express empathy. When we can feel how they feel, that really draw people much closer to you, right? We don't want to be apathy, which is, I don't care how you feel. Or sympathy, oh, I feel sorry for how you feel. The best is empathy. I feel how you feel. When you can connect with them in the emotion, it goes a long way in building positive relationship. Then we talked about sandwich style communication. Extremely useful. I use this all the time. And I saw homework and class actions and examples of how you apply in your very sticky situation with teenagers, with your boss. I was so encouraged. Reading your class action homework is so enriching and very encouraging. So remember, the 2 brag are the positive, and the meat is your recommendation, not so much criticism, recommendation. And be sure, don't use the word but in between. Be sure to say and. And then the wise appeal, I also saw good examples of how you apply that in some sticky situation. Because when you use the wise appeal, you express how you understand what the other person needs and what is your current issue, and you're appealing for more time and clearly say when it is that you'll be available, and people know what to expect and they feel good when you do that. And this is a helpful one when you talk to your boss, especially when you have many projects, and then you can use this approach. Very good. And then finally, on the 5A, express affirmation. We learn how to appreciate, to affirm, catch them do right. Don't just be nagging, and catch people do wrong, right? Not just seeing people speck and didn't see our own beam in our eyes. So be sure to catch people do right, and accepting, be real, be authentic, and then we'll talk more about apology at the end. All right. So again, the shine value, and we expand the shine value to help build positive relationship with our boss. And we talked about how to structure your one-on-one meeting with your boss to talk about people, projects, profit, problem solving, politics, and promotion. And we have this 3-step agenda. And the goal is that you use a shine value and help your boss to shine too, and influence up to help them to be successful, help them to be a superstar within the biblical principle. And then use your ABCDE skill. And then this is the agenda that I recommend. How you set up the time, whether it's 30 minutes a week or once every 2 weeks. And then usually you talk about the completed milestone since the last meeting. And then what's the current priority to make sure we set the same expectation. Agree what's above the line and below the line. And then the career development would be once every 6 months or a couple of times a year. So it wouldn't be every time. So there's a whole talk in our Call to Work website in the Encourage tab you can listen to in depth for a whole hour. Now, going on to our session 9, how do I work? Going to the 4th M, mold the office culture. How do we mold the office culture? We mold the office culture so that we don't get influenced by what may be negative and the gossip and the accusation and the people complaining in the office. That could typically be the negative office culture. We want to be a leader. We want to be a servant leader to influence others, to have positive peer pressure, to influence the office culture, to mold. So we're going to talk in depth. What's the difference between manager and leader? How about command leadership versus servant leadership? And how are we all called to be a servant leader? And how to serve and lead at the same time and do a good job. So let's dive in. And if time allows, we'll go into conflict resolution and apology. So this is a funny cartoon, right? Do you know there are some leaders, and I put it in quotes, where they thought they're leading, and yet when they turn around, there's no one behind them. And why is that? Because people don't know how to follow this leader. They may be calling out a lot of commands and control and instruction, and yet people struggle not knowing how to get from here to there. So we don't see followers behind this leader because he or she isn't really a leader, because this leader didn't really go and help the people, the followers, didn't meet them where they are to help them cross the path to follow. And this is another example cartoon where we see the boss saying, oh, I'd like you to be more self-reliant and independent and show initiative and take greater personal responsibility. But check with me first. So this is a boss who isn't very serious about empowering their employee. Is that you? Is that me? And then these are some good models as just a reference on how a good leader may evolve, looking at how directive you are versus how supportive you are. So we start from all the way to the right. If you're very directive, you are not as supportive, then you're directing and helping people who need the help. And then over time, you become more supportive. Then you're starting to coach them. And then you're less directive because people are more mature now. You only need to support them. And eventually, you would delegate because they are so good and independent. So this is a typical way that you may manage and develop and coach other people, whether it's your mentees or subordinates or people who you're overseeing. So this is a good cycle to work towards. So think of people you're managing or mentoring where they are, and then try to meet them where they are. And I call that situational leadership. Based on the situation, based on the person's need, You want to meet them where they are. You want to meet them where they are, because everyone could be different. So this is another way to summarize it. On the bottom, you see how competent they are. So not very competent, and yet they're very committed. So you're now directing them. Then when they get to be somewhat competent and not that committed, you want to coach them carefully. And then when you get to someone who's competent now and variable commitment, you just provide them the support, and eventually they are very competent and very committed. That's the goal. That's how you want to nurture them toward. Then you can delegate. So that's a good framework to think about when you lead others, when you mentor, when you influence others. Where do they stand, and what part of the cycle do you want to use? Here's another model where on the left is to look at how much you concern for people. Lower is when you don't care about people as much. Higher is when you care about them very much. And then on the horizontal is how much you care about production. On the left is you don't care as much. And on the right is you care a lot about production. So we start from the lower left corner. This is when someone who don't care about people, who doesn't care about production. So this is poor management, right? Not productive. People don't get the caring. And then this is for us to think where you are, self-aware and others aware. In the context of your family, your faith in the church, and your firm at work, all three perspectives. And then you move toward the right. You care a lot about production. Don't care too much about the people. Then you ended up being very authority, very strong. And then in the middle is the middle of the road. Then basically middle production and middle caring about people. And then on the upper left, it's like a country club style, because you care a lot about the people, don't care about production. And of course, the best is the upper left. So that's the direction we're going to go toward. You care about the people and you care about the production. And this applies to parenting, marriage, management, and people you serve together in the church. So think about it. Self-reflection so that you're self-aware and others aware. So what's leadership? You should all remember, right? Our definition, the 17-word definition. The most important word is influence. So when I found this word map, it surprised me. I don't see the word influence, so I had to type in the word influence. Many other words we can relate to. It is unfortunate we're not doing interaction. Many times when we're in a smaller group, we can interact and ask. So this key word is influence. And remember my definition, right? Ability to influence others to be their best for the greater good, aligned to a vision. So someone else also have a similar definition, and she said, leadership is not about being the best. It's not about you. It's about making everyone else better. That's exactly aligned to the definition I share with you, right? Ability to influence others to be their best. So what is the difference between manager and a leader? Managers say, go, 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 go. It's a taskmaster, like was shared earlier. And I tend to have this problem when I was working, driving. Even now, I still focus on a task and getting things done. A leader says, let's go, let's do it together. And they would be in the front, clearing the roadblocks, helping the team to be successful and help them to be their best. So let's put them into words, comparing management versus leadership. And for those of you who are a leader or a manager, I want you to ask yourself these questions. Are you a good manager, or do you actually want to be a good leader? And I would challenge us to be a good leader, not just a good manager. So management would instruct, as a leader we influence. Managers solve problems, a leader partner to solve problems so that we can engage and help the team to be successful. It's not just you doing it. A manager direct and control. A leader would teach and engage, interact, and build relationships. Help them to be their best for the greater good. Managers see people as they are. A leader, remember, help them to be their best, develop and discover their potential. And in my career, I have many leaders who really allow me to discover my potential and be my best and develop my potential. A manager requests, a leader empowers someone to really help them to do it. A manager would be operating and maintaining. A leader would want to improve and go to a higher level. A manager just keep pushing, you saw in the cartoon, and the leader will pull and clear roadblock and support the team. And you can see even the words look like a reverse pyramid. And today, when you have a true servant leadership organization, it's a reverse pyramid. Where's the CEO? In the bottom. The CEO is the one CEO in the company, and they say, I'm in the bottom of the pyramid. I'm here to serve my employees. I'm here to serve my customers. So that is the right approach of looking at servant leadership. So there are more comparison between a boss and a leader. For those of you who are boss in your company, be careful not just to do the boss thing. Take a look at the leader column. That's where you want to be, especially whether you have a title or not, right? So you don't want to drive employee, you want to coach them. You don't want to just depend on your authority, you want to have goodwill. You don't want to inspire fear. I remember there were bosses I had, and myself included, sometimes I may inspire fear. I want to generate enthusiasm instead. I don't say just I want to say we together. And I don't want to just put blame for what didn't work out. Let's go fix it together. And then we know how it's done, but let's also show how it is done to help people to grow and be mature. We don't want to just use people. We want to give opportunity to develop them. And then we don't want to just take credit. We want to give credit as a team. And we don't just want to make commands. We want to ask and see if they agree with it. And we don't just say, go, go, go. We say, let's go. What a contrast. So that is a good reference for us to think about. So as we talk about servant leadership, do you know, in Fortune 100 companies, these companies here actually are known for their servant leadership model in their company, and they are ranked as the best place to work, starting with number 1, Hilton, all the way down to number 95, FedEx Corporation. We recognize these logos in America, and these are well respected. So that is to tell you, when you use servant leadership model, people enjoy working in your company. People enjoy working for you if you are a servant leader. So guess what? The servant leadership model, it sounds like an oxymoron. How can you serve and lead at the same time? So the servant leadership started from 1970, and it happened to be my coworker. Of course, when he was retiring from AT&T, I was just born. So I did not have overlap with him. And yet Mr. Robert Greenlee worked for AT&T for 38 years. He started the idea of servant leadership. I'm so proud to learn that our company actually started servant leadership. So he defined it as, you want to be a servant first. It's a natural feeling that you want to serve and care about others. Remember I told you my goal at work is to glorify God and bless people. And when I bless people, I mean to help others to be successful. So successful that they can take over my job if they're my coworkers and my subordinates. And I don't need to worry about no job because I am producing leaders, right? So that is the natural feeling that you want to serve and help others to be successful. Then, second, you have a conscious choice to aspire to lead. Well, who is the best example of a servant leader? Of course, we can always go back to the Bible, right? The Bible always tells us Jesus was an incredible role model for servant leader. We all remember Jesus washed the feet of the disciples. And there are many other ways he shows servant leadership, by healing the sick, by listening to the needy, by caring for the prostitute, the tax collectors, and helping them. So in Mark 10:45, remind us, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So I pray as we learn about servant leadership, you have the Jesus mindset. What would Jesus do? WWJD. A very famous TED Talk speaker, Simon Sinek, many of you probably know him, he said, when we help ourselves, we find moments of happiness. And yet, when we help others, we find lasting fulfillment. That is terrific. That is so true. And remember the story I showed you, the picture between the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee? Dead Sea is when you only care about yourself, right? You keep all the blessings. And yet the Sea of Galilee is when the water comes in and the water goes out. The blessings come in and the blessings go out. We want to be the Sea of Galilee. And then, of course, our favorite leadership speaker, author, and pastor, John Maxwell said, a successful person finds the right place for himself or herself, but a successful leader finds the right place for others. What a big difference. So it's not about me, myself, and I. It's about other people, right? Leadership is ability to influence others to be their best for the greater good, aligned to a shared vision. So both the president and John Maxwell used the same quote. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. So this book, some of you may have it, Developing the Leader Within You. And it just so happened last night, I saw the Chinese version just got published and translated and published. And I was one of the people who wrote the remark of recommending this book. And I put in my definition of leadership in that book. So for those of you who are interested, go buy one if you're able to read Chinese. So shine, it's another way to summarize these 5 important aspects that John Maxwell said. This is how you show care to people. Sensitive to them, help them to be successful. Important to focus on others' strength, to know what is their strength so that you can help them use their strength, right? That's why we did the strength finder. And everyone loved to work using their strength. And nurture and care about their need, right? Meet them where they are. Where is their need? Don't just tell them, come, come, come. You should come over there and go with them and clear the roadblock. And then entrust and hope in them. So you can empower them. Don't be like that cartoon and say, oh, come back and check with me before you go, right? So you really trust them. This is powerful shine to really show your care. So I'm a big fan of John Maxwell. I have many of his books and I use much of his content for different classes. So these are just a small collection of books in our house. Our 360-degree leadership we use for the summer camp in Taiwan every year. 2 weeks we use this book to teach in the English leadership camp. And this is the Developing the Leader Within You. And I'll soon get the Chinese version. And then other very famous people who write about leadership. So you guys probably know the Popeye chicken in America. So this is the CEO of Popeye Chicken, Cheryl Batchelder. I actually met her in one of the conference and had a nice conversation with her. And she wrote this book recently, Dare to Serve, Dare to Serve, which really encouraged leaders to lead by serving. So we can drive the best result by serving others. And another chicken restaurant, as you probably know, Chick-fil-A, right? Also another business owned by a Christian family. And I also met the CEO and actually had lunch with the CEO and their family at one of the conference. And they all focus on the model of serving. So you can inspire the purpose-driven leaders to show character and competence in all aspects of our life. So we demonstrate integrity and our competence. So these are more leaders, more authors who write about leadership, and they live out the values and principle of leadership. Another favorite one, and you probably heard about him, is Ken Blanchard. Ken Blanchard wrote The 1 Minute Manager way back when. And then in 1996, I actually took a one-day class from him on the golf course at Cornell. I was sent by AT&T to Cornell for a 1-month executive education. And there was one day that Ken Blanchard would come and taught us how to lead on the golf course. I'm not a golfer at all, and yet that was very interesting learning. Later on, I realized that he's also a Christian, which is very, very encouraging. In fact, he lives right here in San Diego. So I'm praying and looking for a pleasant surprise someday when I would meet him again. So he wrote quite a few books. One of them is A Servant Leader. That's a popular topic. So check those out. And when we talk about leadership, right, these are the 4 important qualities that people have defined, especially the Center for Creative Leadership. They said you need to be self-aware. You heard me say this often, right? You need to know yourself, and that's why I asked you to do the SWOT, to know yourself and be self-aware, right? Knowing yourself is already halfway there. Then improving the rest is the other half. Then second is communication, we talked about, and influence. And then they said learning agility. And it's based on these 4 qualities that they consider as core leadership skill in every career that I came up with the complete list of 8 Qs that I believe are my experience in a comprehensive development of leadership using these 8 Qs. So all the ones in purple are the ones we have covered already in the last 8 lessons, right? So we cover intelligent quotient, emotional quotient, adversity quotient, spiritual quotient, and transformational quotient. Today, we're going to focus on leadership quotient, LQ. And I told you, what is most important as a leader? Listen, right? So you see the acrostic, listen. And these are the 8 Qs that we're learning. So we have 3 more classes, and we'll cover HQ and CQ later on. And those are the remaining ones. So if I put all the LQ, I call them the Beatitude Q. You know how the 8 blessings in the Matthew chapter 5, right? So this is like the Beatitude Q. And then I looked at a pleasant surprise I got from my VP, my last boss before I retired. He used my name, Elaine Kong, and came up with this acrostic. And this is the very fancy, big memory book that has a ton of acrostic from other people that my VP asked everyone invited to my retirement party, there are 100 of them, to all create the acrostic using my name. So I'm very encouraged. So if you look at this, Elaine Kong acrostic, you can connect all the 8 Qs in each one of them, all the 8 Qs. And then we'll come back to this one next time when we talk about diversity and talk about culture quotient next time. So we all know the 5P very well, right? When we look at the 5P, we want to know, everyone should have a 5P before you finish this class, just like how you saw us sharing earlier, right? So your purpose will give you a vision, know exactly where you want to go, why you're driven to do certain things. And then your performance will give you the mission, right? So that you know what you want to accomplish. So that is how you want to build up your 5P through each one of these, right? So we know this very well. I don't want to go through in detail, but I want to show you how the 5P map into the 8Q that we just talked about. So this is kind of as a reference. And to highlight, everyone needs to have a vision. Without a vision, not knowing where you're going and why you're doing it, it's going to be very miserable. So I actually use this 5P now to help not just career people. I'm helping many families to use this 5P to discuss as a family, as a married couple, with their children. What is the purpose in their life and what is the purpose in this family? So this is very powerful to help build relationship and communication. So you can fit all the where and why, when and how, and the what and the who into the 5P and these 8Q. So that can correlate what you're called to do, what your character, how you're committed to your passion, and your chemistry is the relationship with people, and then finally the competence that you have the hard skill to contribute and have good performance to deliver on your mission. So all these are important as a good leader. So each one of these will take a lot more time. That's why we want everyone to consider joining the small group so that we could learn not just the knowledge, but how to apply it. What does it mean for you? And how do you translate into action? So when we think about spiritual leadership, there are 3 roles you can think about. And this on its own would be another hour. But just to introduce to you, and you can think about it and say, just like how Jesus was, right? He was a prophet, a priest, and a king. In the same way, we have all these 3 roles as a leader. In fact, we as a parent also have these 3 roles, and I will talk about it in parenting talk like that too. So as a leader, as a prophet, you need to explain to everyone, why are you doing it? What's the truth? What's right and wrong? And as a priest, you care about people and you pray for them. You want to build good relationship and how to actually do it and show it to them. And then as a king, you kind of set boundary. You give the rules and the policy, what to do and what not to do, and set boundary. So these are things to consider. And you can put this in your class action, think about how you can apply it. Now we go back to John Maxwell. He defines 5 levels of leadership. 5 levels of leadership. And he said, good leadership isn't about advancing yourself, right? Just like the quote we saw earlier. It's about advancing your team. So again, it's not about me, myself, and I. It's about the team collectively. So true leadership must be for the benefit of the followers, not to enrich the leader. So keep reminding ourselves, it's about other people, other-centered. So these 5 levels of leadership, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail. And then as we are listening to this, think about where you are, who you are, right? Level 1, the very basic. People follow you because they have to, because you have a title, you have a position. So you have the right to lead. Not good enough. Second level, the P is the permission. People give you permission to lead because they want to, because you have good relationship with them. That's great. Not good enough. How about production? People want to follow you because of what you did for the organization. You can produce results. Yes, that's good. How about further higher, further up? Level 4, people want to follow you because you are good at people development. You reproduce leaders. Remember I told you, my goal is to bless others and help others to be successful so that they can take over my job. I don't need to worry about no job because the company want to see more Elaine, more leaders being reproduced, and there are other jobs and other opportunities, right? So people want to follow you because of what you did for them. You care about them. You develop them. You want to build them up to be new leaders and be successful. Ultimate level 5 The P and the R there is the pinnacle. You're at the peak of leadership. People follow you because of who you are and what you represent. Wow. Because people respect you. You just showing up because of all the things that you did in the past, they just respect you for who you are. So let's all help each other, encourage one another, especially with your accountability partner, how to build each other up. So remember those 8 Qs? Again, I mapped them here to show how you need these 8 Qs for each level of the 5 levels of leadership, and also the 5 Cs. So this is a good way to think about that, to ask yourself, where are you now and where do you want to grow in the next level? And then we want to compare, what's the difference between command leadership versus servant leadership? It should be pretty obvious, right? In a very simple term, command leadership is me, myself, and I. Command and control. It's about me, my title, listen to me, and do everything I say. And yet servant leadership is about others-centered. Care about what people need, listen to others, care about equipping and investing in others. And you're open-minded and open to other people's input and suggestion. And that command and control always hang on to power and position and belittle other people, don't care about others as much. Don't trust other people, not willing to empower them. And then even sometimes may deceive people and control our fear or so-called negative bad politics. On the other hand, as a servant leader, we're willing to step aside if someone else is better than you. Wow. So one time, one of my advocates or sponsor now has become the CEO of the current company. He told me, and he told others as well, he said, why is he successful? He said he surrounds himself with people smarter than himself. Wow, that tells me he's humble and he allowed other people who are more qualified to contribute to the team. So that is servant leadership. So you care about serving others and really have an open door policy and listen to other people's ideas and have a good, positive atmosphere that people trust you, they're willing and they're comfortable talking to you even about negative things. So Mr. Robert Greenleaf defined these 10 attributes, and we're not going to go into detail. Again, these you can read more in detail offline. Just want to paint you a big picture and some of the key aspects of servant leadership. So I rearranged them and created an acrostic for him. He didn't know that, and he's no longer here. So I hope you can enjoy these acrostics to help us to lead these 5 C. Again, listen, empathy, awareness, self-aware and others aware, persuasion, very important, right? Not to just control and command, but persuade. And that has a lot to do with communication skill and conflict resolution skill. And then stewardship, so serving others. Then the 5 C are conceptualization, right? How to explain a concept and make it clear and concise to people and compelling. Commitment to people's growth, community building, relationship building, caring and healing people's relationship or pains, and finally have a clear vision and that you can create and manage opportunity, not just reacting to things or reacting to the past, you respond and also predictive. So that is really good servant leadership. So my own acrostic for 2 leadership definitions. 1, leadership, it's a lifestyle. Leadership, it's a lifestyle. Look at this. Look at these 10 lines of suggestions, how we can integrate leadership in our lifestyle. And I'm sure you can resonate with many of these, right? Remember, we just learned the VIP, vision, influence, and the 5P. And you know the 5P and the 5R from the 5 levels of leadership we just talked about. And then as a leader, we need to listen, to love, and be the light. And most recently, I love this new one I just added. Don't just talk the talk. We need to walk the talk, right? So you don't just say it in your lips. We need to live it in our life and leave a legacy to influence others. So I think this acrostic leadership really, again, can take a whole hour to go through each one of them. How can we integrate one at a time? So I suggest you can consider using this in your group, in your family, and learn one at a time in your own accountability group and in the future when we go through our small group. And finally, leadership in action. Leadership in action. Again, more actionable ideas, how you could implement leadership, servant leadership in your work, in your family, and in your community. And each one of these, we can think about ideas. And that's when I'm going to ask you to do in your class action, how to speak without accusing, how to excel in your vision and leverage your strength, right? Ultimately, you need to execute and deliver, and then give back to the community to help others. So always thinking about serving first, leading second. And then finally, for us to be called as a servant leader. So this is a summary of all the servant leadership to close out. Remember the core leadership, right? We all want to be a servant leader of integrity, how to be aware of ourselves, how to learn fast, and how to communicate, and how to have good empathy, right? How to influence others. So how to lean in for both work and a different community, and how to listen, right? The whole 8 Qs that we can exercise. And then we can drive our maturity one step at a time, one level at a time. And then the last picture I want to show you is the geese. You know how the geese lead? The good news is it isn't just ourselves. We have a team. So this whole idea, learning to lead like the geese, you know, when they fly like a V shape, and the first geese is the most tiring. And then did you see they would go back to the end and then someone else will come. This is a very powerful concept. And I'll leave this with you to encourage you not to worry. You're not on your own. You're leading to be smarter as a team. How we learn from the geese that together as a team, you share the same goal and you have mutual blessing, whether you give or you take. We don't just always think giving, it's also helpful to receive from other people as well. And then you learn from each other as a team player or a leader, and you take turn. You take turn, whether in your project, there's something to think about, or in your workplace, in your church, in the same way. And then make sure we take care of the weaker members, right? The weakest link. Who is the weaker one? How can we help them? Meet them where they are. And then encourage one another. And last but not least, be sure to be raised by the Holy Spirit. So I want to encourage you to be a servant leader. It may sound really hard, and yet we have a team together. And remember the 5 P blessings, right? In my whole career, in my whole Christian life of 39 years, there's not a day I didn't experience any one of these 5 P blessings. And in fact, when I retired, one of the gifts I received, and my coworkers know about these 5 P, they framed a poem of this 5 P leadership using the 5 P blessings into a picture frame. So this is one of the walls in our house. So this I am showing for the first time in any audience. Wow, you actually can lead using the 5 P. So now we run out of time. I'm going to talk about conflict resolution and the steps for apology next time. So I'm going to jump to the end and share some quick reminders and announcements and resources. And then we will break into small groups, Brother Wu, if you get ready, and Joyce. So again, for those of you who came late, remember, starting next weekend, those of us in US and Canada, we will meet 1 hour earlier, 1 hour earlier. And And then remember, always don't just be a knowledge giant that you know a lot, a big head, and yet your little hands and little feet. Make sure that you put it into practice and go from passive learning to active learning. That's why, so for those of you who didn't do the survey yet, we want to do the small group to follow up, and be sure to have a partner, a prayer partner. So always remind us, we don't go in a vicious cycle, we want to be in a virtuous cycle to help each other. And this is the survey. It only takes 3 minutes. So we'll schedule and arrange the groups, and then I'll meet with you regularly to address specific questions and challenges that you have in applying all this incredible, rich information. How can you apply? And then finally, this is our website where many other talks are available, including our training from these 12 weeks. And then for those of you who use WeChat or Line, those are the QR code. And good news, many of you, all of you. Joyce, did you see the email from Michelle?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So you are invited for free to join Right Now Media at Work, because Call to Work has paid for it. And once you accept the invitation, go find in your spam box if you didn't see it, because Michelle sent it to all of us, all 280 of us who registered. So you could access the video for free. And this conference is coming up next weekend. And we have 700 people registered so far. 700. If you want to join us, it's only 2.5 hours on 2 Saturdays. So we welcome you to join. So we learn how to work as global, local mission. So those are resources, and I think that's it.
欢迎订阅生命树媒体频道。